Welcome everybody to another episode of the Trusted Trustee podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Tracey, besters in the Southern Highlands. How are you, Tracey? It's great to see you, as usual.
Thank you, Darin. I'm doing really well, thank you. And it's so exciting that the weather is getting warmer down here. So, I'm happy on all fronts.
Does it ever get warm in the Southern Highlands, does it?
Yes, it does
Way too
actually.
cold for me.
It does.
Anyway, of course, we have a very valued sponsor for this podcast. So it is brought to you by Super Fund Property Valuations. Take the tension out of tax time by making Super Fund Property Valuations your number one choice for all your SMSF property valuation requirements. Order a report today by filling in your details online at superfundpropertyvaluations.com.au and let Superfund Property Valuations take care of the hard work. And as usual, my message is that valuations are very much a focus of the ATO, and it's only going to get more intense with the Division 296 tax, if it ever does come in. We don't know what the timing is. I see Jim Chalmers has made another comment about how it's going to be delayed. It's not going to be discussed in the next set of parliamentary sitting days. So your guess is
Mm.
as good as mine. And of course, all that serves to do is close the window of preparation if he is not prepared to delay the implementation of that tax. And I'll bet any money that he won't delay that implementation, no matter how sensible as that might be. But we all know there is no common sense around that policy. So yeah, get ready for that one. But we're not here to talk about Div 296 because I could get distracted and talk about that for the rest of the day. We're actually going to talk about some estate planning issues just in the lead up to the fact that we'll be going into a little bit more depth on this subject at the SMSF Trustee Empowerment Day 2025, which we all hope you'll be joining us for. So, Trace, let's start it.
Yeah.
Look, right at the start is really, some people call it ruling from the grave. But it really is all about the wishes of the relevant member who is actually putting that plan in place, isn't it? What they want to achieve, who they
Yeah.
want the benefits to go to, and how effectively they can make that happen without it all falling apart and obviously having their wishes not honoured.
Absolutely, Darren. And I think that number one, I'm not going to bet against you in that Div 296 Jim Chan discussion. So we're on the same page there. But coming to estate planning, yeah, it really is, it really does fall down to, well, what do you want to see happen? So if I was to ask myself this question and I was no longer here today because I was hit by a bus yesterday, no longer here today, what do I want to see happen to my superannuation member benefits? And that's where any conversation around SMSF estate planning or SMSF death benefits really needs to start. What do you as the member want to see happen to your benefits in the event that you're no longer here? Start with that question and then everything else will fall into place.
I suppose it might come with also a bit of crystal balling of recognizing what the personalities of some of the death benefit recipients might be, as
Yeah.
far as how fastidious you have to be with all of the arrangements you make in your estate plan, as
Mm.
horrible as that,
Mm.
that thought is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite a morbid topic, this one. So it is hard to get your head kind of into thinking about, well, oh gosh, if I'm no longer here, what do I want to see happen? And you're 100% right, Darren, because uh, if you're no longer here, you can't make decisions, right? So the next step, I guess, is, well, who's going to make those decisions for you? And are those people quite trustworthy or capable or willing to be able to implement your wishes in the way that you want? Because if you don't have those people in your life or in your family, or if there's going to be some other conflict, then we're going to have to fall into perhaps different types of documentation or different types of strategies to be able to ensure that your wishes are met. You can't just leave it to chance.
Yeah, certainly a lot has to go into this. It's not just something you can click your fingers and say that, oh,
No.
let's just do it in one afternoon, but a lot of careful thought. But we're not
Mm.
actually going to talk about all of the nitty-gritty to do with that. We're probably going to have a slightly more nuanced, if you want to call it, discussion about particular aspects
Yes.
of estate planning that people are probably still struggling a little bit with. And look, we're going to kick it off again, going back to binding death benefit nominations, or
Yeah.
BDBNs, as we love our acronyms. And we're not going to dive into exactly what one is or whatever, but Tracy's actually picked up on some of the confusions still out there around, you know, some of the finer details of what is involved here. So one of the things that does raise its ugly head often is, well, when do I put one in place?
Yeah. The
As
million dollar
basic as
question,
that
Darin.
sounds, like when do I do one?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there seems to be two school of thoughts, and they're quite, they're quite diabolically opposed here. One is, well, you never have one because the trustees will make decisions, and by the way, you'll be dead, so what does it matter anyway? On one side of the coin, and on the other side of the coin, it's you must always have a binding death benefit nomination in place because then it's, everyone has to do exactly what you say. And yes, those are two opinions. However, there's lots of in between there, Darin. And I think that too often we have a binding death benefit nomination when we really don't need one. Um, and then in the same breath, too often we probably should have a binding death benefit nomination. We try to put a binding death benefit nomination in place, but we get it wrong. And so in both of those equations, then we open ourselves up to litigation. And that's where the problem lies, isn't it? Because if we have a conflict, and unfortunately, I don't know how many times, I'm not an estate planning lawyer. I don't know how many times, the concept of death and money cause conflict in a family, how frequent that is. But, we hear of cases over and over and over again, don't we, around conflict and disputes around money on death and SMSF benefits being paid out. So if we want more certainty, then we need to think about, well, what documentation do we need to have? And one of those documents certainly is a binding death benefit nomination, but it's got to be executed correctly.
Yeah, I think the worst thing about this, and it's probably a bit of a microcosm of society, is that we're actually seeing more and more litigation in
Mm,
this space rather
mm,
than fewer and fewer cases. Whenever we see presentations within the sector, there's always new court cases being brought up about this has set a precedent for this, or this is a warning about,
yeah.
they didn't do this properly, so it was allowed to be challenged. That's a horrible thing to say, I know, but that is
Mm,
unfortunately reality. So it is
mm,
getting increasingly important to get these things right. If I mean, I know that the member will be dead by then, but you
yeah.
still don't want to see your loved ones or your family members, tear themselves apart over disputes when it can be pretty easily avoided. So,
Yeah.
Tracy, I'm sorry.
No, no, that's fine. So I think that one of the things that I like to do with clients and when I'm talking to them about their SMSF estate planning is number one, just to ask them that question around what do you want to see happen? And then number two, let's think about some of the things that might go wrong. Let's think about some of the disputes that might come to the forefront, or let's think about who do you want to make these decisions, or who do you want to implement this stuff that you want to see, and let's try and find some gaps. Let's try and find some issues that might arise. And yes, it's all crystal balling, and it's not a great conversation because that's generally where people say, well, actually I think my kids are going to fight each other tooth and nail to get more money than the other one, and it's like, okay. So those kind of conversations come out, but they're really important conversations to have, Darin, because it's in asking those questions and in finding out what those issues might be that we can actually start to put some more finer detail in place around, well, maybe you really should be doing X, Y, and Z in conjunction with your estate planning lawyer or the lawyer that's putting together your wills. So it's not a standalone process. It's certainly a cohesive process with the other professionals, but you've got to start that conversation somewhere. And I think that we're just seeing lots of SMSFs that haven't really, or lots of SMSF members that haven't really had this conversation or haven't really started to think about what they want to see happen. And in those cases, if something happens to one of the members, then it is going to be left up to their loved ones to sort it all out.
Yeah, so one of the things you did mention when I brought up the subject of BDVNs is you've
Yeah,
seen situations where you got to weigh up whether or not it's an appropriate to actually have one. Like, say, who
sure.
should have one and who shouldn't
Mm,
have one. What are some
mm.
of those situations that people have to weigh up as to, oh, is it right for me? Or, oh, actually, I don't really need one.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is some war stories, I guess, that are always fun to talk about, except that someone's actually been through it. So, look, I've had situations over the years, Darin, where um, a binding death benefit nomination was in place, paying out to the children, and basically one of the children was going through a very, very difficult business situation where they may have had to declare bankruptcy. And so you certainly don't want to have a situation where a chunk of money might be forced into the hands or paid directly into that person's hands if they're going to be declaring bankruptcy and that money therefore isn't available to their creditors. So that's one example. The other example is, marriage breakdown or relationship breakdown. You also don't necessarily want a binding death benefit nomination paid from, say, the parent to the child if that child is going through some sort of relationship breakdown, because again, that asset might become part of the assets to be divided. So you've really got to think about what's happening in your family dynamics and in your extended family or your parent children dynamics before you set this document in place. Or if you've got the documents in place, you then need to be thinking about, well, if something happens and something changes within the family dynamic, well, what does that mean for my superannuation fund and my SMSF benefits? Do I need to change anything? So it's certainly not a set and forget document that you draw up at some point, you never change it ever again. It has to be quite fluid and quite dynamic.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? I know, Tracy, you often talk about, I know you're not a fan of including children in an
Yeah.
SMSF. But again, it's a common theme, isn't it? Once you start involving other generations or other relatives in strategies like that, then you actually do have to think about, well,
Yeah.
what are their marital or relationship situations and how volatile might that be and what you have to plan for in the future. So it
Yeah.
does go down a bit of an intricate path, not just the immediate direct line, but also a lot of offshoots after that that you do have to take into account. That's very tricky.
Yeah, it really is, Darin. And this is where it sometimes just gets thrown into the too hard basket as well, doesn't it? Because once you start to draw out this tree of, where the money's going to flow and what do I want to see happen, and then it kind of you go, I don't want to talk about any of that stuff now. I don't want to think about any of that stuff. It's all too hard. Let's just park it and we'll deal with it another time. So it does get a little bit overwhelming. And I just think that sometimes we procrastinate these, difficult conversations and difficult decisions. And part of my job and part of what I hope for, particularly those that come along to the Trustee Empowerment Day, is that they'll be able to leave that particular session that I'm going to do with more clarity around, some of the things that they should be considering and, just really making some decisions for them and their family.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of things that they should be considering, you did say that once you've committed to this path, then you've got to get your documentation in line and
Yeah.
obviously dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that everything is watertight. So again, it can't be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads us to another question or another thing that you should
Mm-hmm.
determine, and that is who will do it? Who will put the binding death benefit nomination in place? And again, sometimes these questions and sometimes these concepts seem a little bit, well, that sounds a bit silly, Darin. I mean, that's very basic, but actually it's not because, and we see this all the time, don't we, Tracy, where
Yeah.
the professional lines can be blurred,
Yes.
where an accountant may put his hand up and say, "Oh, yeah, no problem, Darin, I can do that for you. Let me take care of the paper," or a financial advisor. And
Yeah.
really, when they're talking about legal documents, which a lot of these are,
Yes.
they actually can't do it, and the propensity to make an error, and a very costly one, mind you,
Yeah.
is huge.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And as an accountant myself, Darin, I would not do a binding death benefit nomination on behalf of a client. I'm always working in conjunction with their lawyer because I don't know all of the legal issues that are going to come up with their family situation. I'm not doing their will. I'm not doing their personal estate planning. All I'm looking after in most cases is the SMSF side of things at that point. So I'm not certainly a legal person that can draw up that document and make sure that that is going to be legally binding. I can help with the education side of the process, but certainly not with the execution of the document. So there's also a lot of SMSF establishment kits. You know, when you sign up for your SMSF, a lot of those kits and those documentation packages, some of them often have a BDBN, a blank document that you can fill in, but you've got to make sure that you fill it in correctly. So you really need to be seeking some advice around, well, have I completed this document properly? Because if you actually complete a document and you don't sign it correctly, or it's not filled in correctly, then it's not worth the piece of paper it's written on, you know. So, and it can be basically torn up at any point in time under a litigation process. And we've seen so many cases about that. And, you know, you and I have spoken on this podcast before about war stories and cases where people have got it wrong in estate planning. And one of those cases was a lawyer, Mr. Munro, and he
Yeah.
filled in his own binding death benefit nomination incorrectly. So, you know, what hope is the general public got if a lawyer doesn't even get it right? So you've just got to be really careful and the nuances in the wording, because again, if your decision is that you want a binding nomination, so that means that the trustees of the fund must do what that documentation tells them to do, then it has to be completed properly. Otherwise, the trustees can say, or whoever's, you know, arguing on the other side can say, no, actually, the trustees don't have to do what this document says because it wasn't completed validly. So little tiny things like that can actually cause the whole strategy to undo.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to take risks like that. And I
No.
get it that it's always more convenient for the client to go to one source, hopefully for all of their SMSF needs from a professional and an advice
Mm.
situation or set of circumstances. But also know that it's probably better for the practitioner themselves because, you know, if you suffer loss because of what the practitioner did, then they can be on the hook also for some
Yeah.
sort of compensation, or they can be sued as well. So it's actually in the interests of both parties, and you just don't want to go down that path where
No.
you just know that it's open for another round of litigation to try and get back any sort of loss or you know a situation you're facing simply because the legal documents weren't done properly,
Yeah,
executed
100%.
properly, that
Exactly.
or prepared properly. That's something pretty simple and
Yeah.
obviously should be avoided at all costs. Now,
Mm.
Tracy, another thing that a lot of
Yeah.
people I know and you know like to do is to include life insurance cover
Yes.
inside their SMSFs. Now, there's a whole variety of reasons why people do this, but
Mm.
one of the common reasons is that for cash flow reasons, it comes out of the super fund rather than them having to pay the premium out of their pocket. And they
Mhm.
also get obviously a deduction in the fund for those premiums as well, potentially.
Mhm.
So, but there's always a but here. When it actually comes to the member whose covered is dying and the payout coming out, then there's a whole myriad of other issues that you have to take into account when it comes to the estate planning and who
Yeah.
the cover actually gets paid out to, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly, Darren. And it's great that you've mentioned that really, because I was reading a question that was asked on one of the SMSF forums that I follow, and I talk about SMSF forums a lot. And it's really I follow them because I really I want to understand what members of SMSFs are asking what they're struggling with. And I hadn't really thought about this particular thing as being a potential misunderstanding, but it actually is. So the question that was raised is around, well, there's lots of questions around, well, do I need to have life insurance in my SMSF? And the short answer is no, you don't have to, but you must in your investment strategy, which is one of the covenants, the superannuation covenants that we have to adhere by, is to have a strategy in place. And part of that investment strategy is you must consider insurance. And that is a must, not a maybe. You must consider it. Doesn't mean you have to have it, but you must consider it and document the fact that you have considered whether to hold insurance inside the super fund. So if you have life insurance, so I'm the member of the super fund, my super fund trustee is the owner of the policy, I'm the life insured. If I was to die, then the proceeds of that life insurance actually go into the super fund. It doesn't go out to anybody else. And this is the question that was asked on the forum as well. I'm filling in the form, and this person said, I'm filling in a form with insurance company. I know who the owner is, that's the super fund. I know who the life insured is, that's me. But where do I put down my beneficiaries, who I want the money to go to? And that's where the confusion can lie, because we have to keep remembering that we've got a trustee hat, a superannuation trustee hat, and a superannuation member hat. And so it's the trustee that takes out the life insurance policy over the member, and it's the trustee that needs to ensure that all of the documentation is in play as to, you know, where that money goes to if the member has passed away. So, you know, Jason, my spouse, if I wanted the money to go to Jason, then I can't put that information into my insurance documentation. If the insurance is owned by the super fund, that's got to be in my superannuation documentation, in my SMSF documents. And that's where either I would have a non-binding nomination or a binding nomination to say, well, this is where I want my money to go to. So it is another layer of steps and things that we need to do. And it's not just as simple as having a life insurance policy outside of super where I own the policy, or Jason, my husband, owns the policy over my life. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So yes, there's a whole lot of other questions and steps that you have to go through around, well, where is the money going to flow at the end of the day from that life insurance policy?
It's a pretty easy step, not mistake. I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's a pretty easy misunderstanding
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get into your head, because everybody would probably be thinking that a life policy would you just name the beneficiary on the policy, don't you?
yes, yeah,
So
exactly,
if it is
exactly.
Jason, you just put Jason's name on the policy and that would be it. If unfortunately you popped off, paid to him, and that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah,
Once you put the SMSF's name on it,
yeah,
then that has to go through a whole process of,
yes,
it's not really quite that easy. Even if that's what the ultimate outcome you want to have happen,
correct,
it's not
correct.
that easy to just say that, oh, this is a good idea, isn't it? I'll pay my premiums out of my super fund
Yes,
without actually really understanding, oh, does that take whole lot of more administrative rigor if it actually gets paid out?
yeah, exactly. And you know, it's kind of like a couple of episodes, I think, on the podcast, Darin, we were talking about keeping assets separate. And it's that same sort of conversation and it's that same mindset that we need to, you know, have in our SMSF head around, well, this is a separate legal entity. Yes, I'm the member, but it's also my superannuation fund is not me. I'm a member of my superannuation fund. So therefore I have to think about it in those two hats, my trustee hat and my member hat, and those are different. And so when we're making these kind of the decision about where I want the money to go comes from my member hat. How the trustee is going to fund that comes from my trustee hat, and those two things are slightly different. So it is, I totally understand why there's that kind of, you know, I totally understand why there's a misunderstanding. I get it. I get it. And I just hadn't, because I'm in the industry day in, day out, I just hadn't thought about it, you know, from that regard. So it was a really good question that was asked, and I'm glad that that person asked that question because it meant that we could have this conversation and discuss that, which is good.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? And again, anybody who listens to these podcasts would realize that when we're talking about the SMSF world, there's just a bunch of recurring themes. We've actually already
Yes.
touched on some of them today. The investment
Yeah.
strategy. We haven't talked about the sole purpose test, but that obviously sometimes comes into it. And of course, the trust deed as well, which are three key elements that you have to keep
Yeah.
in mind.
Yeah.
But again, we always think about the end when you're at the beginning. And this is
Yeah.
another classic case in point of, okay,
Yeah.
I'm at the beginning of putting together an estate planning policy or potentially taking out a life insurance policy, but then
Mhm.
start thinking about the end that, okay, so when it comes to fruition, you actually get the premium gets or the cover gets paid out to the
Yeah.
beneficiary, then what?
Exactly.
Because it's a
Exactly.
great idea straight up, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, well, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Without knowing that, oh, I didn't realize that I had to do all this other stuff to make it.
Exactly. That it won't just magically happen. Nothing magically happens in the SMSF world, Darren. It's all
No.
there's all there's all decisions and all kind of documents and steps along the way. And you're 100% right. Why are you taking out a life insurance policy if you haven't worked out what's going to happen with the flow of that money at the end of the day? Because yeah, it's great. Let's get the life insurance policy, pop it into the super fund. Okay, that's nice. Then what, like you're saying. And even if we take it back one step down, if it's not life insurance, this has been a kind of, ongoing conversation that I've had with clients for many years as well. What about income protection insurance
Yeah.
or trauma insurance? Yes, let's say income protection. Yes, the self-managed super fund could have an income protection insurance over my life. But the money goes to the self-managed super fund. I still have to meet a condition of release to be able
Yeah.
to get that money out to pay me that income stream for my period of temporary incapacity, which is where income protection would come into play. And the waiting periods for the insurance policy are completely different to the condition of release requirements for me to get access. So it's always a two-step process when we're talking about the SMSF being involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, turning our attention to the SMSF Trustee Empowerment Day, which
Yeah.
we're both looking forward to hosting and presenting at later in September, you're going to be talking about some of these issues in more detail, and not just these issues, but additional estate planning issues as well, aren't you, Tracy?
I am Darren. So I am looking at the do's and don'ts basically of estate planning. So things that trustees and members should consider, things to make sure that it doesn't all go pear-shaped as best we can. Some of the documentation considerations. I'm really excited about sharing some structure diagrams and just showing the flow of how the steps work and the flow of how it all kind of comes together. And I think those visual representations that I'll be going through in that presentation, Darren, hopefully will cement a whole lot of the concepts that people have heard about, because what we're talking about isn't brand new. It's been around for a long time, but there's still that kind of misconception as to, well, how does it all come together? So my vision for that session and that presentation is that it's going to help people pull it together and help people to be able to make those decisions with clarity. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about talking about debt, which
Well,
sounds
that's
bad.
that, well, you've got to put a positive spin on stuff. So
Exactly.
if you do want to, please come along and see Tracy's big flow chart or spider diagram or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, because we can't do those sorts of things on these podcasts because
No,
most people who are consuming this are probably not looking at it from a visual forum. So,
exactly.
yeah, come along and see those diagrams. But it's actually more than that. If
Mm.
outside of everything that we've discussed here or everything that Tracy might discuss during her presentation, there's an extra dimension because Tracy's actually going to be on an expert panel or a discussion panel, Q&A panel, whatever you want to call it. I can't even
Mm.
remember what we call it in the program, but it is an opportunity to ask Tracy and a number of other people about some of the issues that you might be having with your self-managed super fund and how certain things apply to it and what you can do. It's a great
Yeah,
opportunity, isn't it, Tracy? And I think they should be thinking about their questions right now,
I
personally.
I would encourage people to be thinking about their questions right now, Darin. It's look, it's one of my favorite parts of the Trustee Empowerment Day, Darin, and I've been involved with them for a few years now. And part of my, one of the favorite things is that Q&A session that we have. I think it's at the end of the day, and just having people ask those questions. And if you've got a question that is burning in your, SMSF being, then the chances are that somebody else has got that question as well or has thought about that. So, and I think last year at the Trustee Empowerment Day, Darin, there was some questions that were asked, and other people went, "Oh yeah, actually, I thought about that too." So it's a great forum and a great opportunity to be able to throw those questions around. And yeah, when do you get to have a group of experts in front of you that you can just throw those questions at, and we will do our very, very best to answer them.
Yep, so get enthused about it. If you haven't already registered, please do that. I think early bird might be closed by the time that you listen to this podcast, but it doesn't really matter. Please visit our website and make sure you click on the event and register, because I can guarantee you'll get value out of it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm hosting the event. There will be some great presentations and sharing stuff that you won't normally get access to. We've got the ATO presenting there, so you get
Mm,
to hear directly from the regulator's mouth. I often talk about their focus on valuations, but Paul Delahunty will be able to tell you about other stuff that they're focused on, so you don't get
yeah.
in any compliance trouble there. Of course, you don't want to with the ATO. So we all hope that you'll be joining us, and it's almost like a bit of a live version of one of these podcasts, really. So if you want
Yeah.
to participate and want to be part of it, don't forget to register, and we'd love to see you in either Sydney or Melbourne. Doesn't matter. We're
Yeah.
really looking forward to it. So, on that note, I think we'll probably wrap it up today because I think we've run out of time. So, as usual, I would like to thank Tracey for her time and her effort for joining us today to put together another edition of the Trusted Trustee podcast. Thanks, Trace.
It- Thanks, Darin. It's my pleasure. And make sure if you do register for that Trustee Empowerment Day, listeners, make sure to come and say hi. Tell us that you are listening to our podcast, and make sure you say hello.
Yep, that would be great. We love feedback, positive feedback, well, positive or negative. At least we know
Love
you're
feedback.
listening to it. So yeah, please don't be shy in coming forward to tell us that. Thanks also again to Super Fund Property Valuations for their continued support. Thank you very much to my team who produce these podcasts and upload them to all the platforms that we share them on. And don't forget, if you're enjoying this content on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and like this podcast as well. Very important for our metrics. You've got to start somewhere. So if we can build momentum there, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So, other than that, thank you very much for joining us today on the Trusted Trustee podcast. And we look forward to having your company. Well, firstly, look forward to seeing you at the Trustee Empowerment Day, but also look forward to having your company on the next episode of this series of podcasts. Until then, travel safely and bye for now.
Bye for now.